The sun was just beginning to climb over the mountains as Alex finished packing his backpack, double-checking his supplies one last time. Water bottles, trail mix, first aid kit, map, compass, and an extra layer just in case the weather turned. Alex had always been the cautious type, preferring to be over-prepared rather than caught off guard. This meticulous nature extended to all aspects of his life, from his organized apartment to his carefully planned career in environmental science. But there was something about being in nature that allowed a different side of him to emerge, a more spontaneous, adventurous Alex that few people ever got to see. The sound of tires on gravel announced Jamie's arrival. Alex couldn't help but smile as he watched his friend practically bounce out of the car, all energy and enthusiasm as always. Jamie was everything Alex wasn't: outgoing, impulsive, and effortlessly charming. With his tousled hair and ever-present smile, Jamie had a way of making everyone around him feel at ease. Everyone except Alex, that is, who often found himself tongue-tied and flustered in Jamie's presence for reasons he wasn't quite ready to examine. "Ready for the best hike of your life?" Jamie called out, slinging his own pack over his shoulder with casual confidence. "I've been wanting to explore Silveridge Trail for years. They say the views from the summit are absolutely incredible." Alex nodded, trying to ignore the flutter in his stomach that had nothing to do with pre-hike jitters. "I've got the trail map right here. It's supposed to be about 7 miles round trip, moderate difficulty." Jamie laughed, that warm sound that always made Alex's heart beat a little faster. "Always the planner. That's what I love about you, Alex. But sometimes the best adventures happen when you don't know exactly what's coming next." Those words would prove more prophetic than either of them could have imagined as they set off toward the trailhead, the morning air crisp and full of possibility. The beginning of the hike was everything they had hoped for. The trail wound through dense forest, sunlight filtering through the canopy of leaves and creating dappled patterns on the ground beneath their feet. The earthy scent of pine and moss filled the air, and the only sounds were their footsteps, birdsong, and the occasional rustle of small animals in the underbrush. "Look at that!" Jamie exclaimed, pointing to a vibrant blue jay perched on a nearby branch. "First wildlife spotting goes to me. I'm keeping score, you know." Alex rolled his eyes, but couldn't help smiling. "If we're counting, I already saw 3 squirrels and a woodpecker while you were still adjusting your backpack at the trailhead." "Those don't count," Jamie protested. "The competition officially started when we both had boots on the trail." This playful banter continued as they made their way deeper into the forest. Jamie would point out interesting rock formations or particularly beautiful wildflowers, while Alex shared his knowledge about the local ecosystem, identifying plants and explaining their roles in the forest's delicate balance. "How do you know all this stuff?" Jamie asked, genuinely impressed after Alex had explained how the bracket fungi on a fallen log were actually helping to decompose it and return nutrients to the soil. Alex shrugged, a hint of color rising to his cheeks at Jamie's admiration. "Just part of my job, I guess. When you study environmental systems long enough, you start seeing how everything connects." "That's what I admire about you," Jamie said, his voice suddenly serious. "You see the world differently than most people. You notice things others miss." The moment hung between them, charged with something neither was ready to name. Alex cleared his throat and suggested they stop for water, grateful for the chance to break the tension. As they continued hiking, the trail began to climb more steeply. Conversation gave way to the sound of their breathing as they tackled the increasingly challenging terrain. Alex found himself watching Jamie from behind, admiring the easy grace with which he navigated the rocky path, the way sunlight caught in his hair, turning it to gold. It was during one of these distracted moments that they missed the marker indicating a fork in the trail. Neither noticed at first, too caught up in the rhythm of the hike and the beauty surrounding them. The path they followed seemed well-trodden enough, though it began to narrow slightly as they progressed. It wasn't until they reached a small clearing about an hour later that Alex pulled out his map and frowned. "That's strange," he murmured, looking around at their surroundings and then back at the map. "According to this, we should be approaching a ridge with views of the valley, but this doesn't look right at all." Jamie came to peer over his shoulder, standing close enough that Alex could smell the faint scent of his shampoo mixed with the clean sweat of exertion. "Maybe the map is outdated? Or we're reading it wrong." Alex shook his head, a knot of anxiety forming in his stomach. "I think we might have taken a wrong turn somewhere. This doesn't match any of the landmarks on the official trail." For a moment, concern flashed across Jamie's face, but it was quickly replaced by his characteristic grin. "So what you're saying is, we're having an adventure." "Jamie, this isn't funny," Alex protested, though he couldn't help but feel slightly reassured by his friend's optimism. We could be miles from the main trail by now. Jamie placed a hand on Alex's shoulder, the touch sending an unexpected warmth through him despite his worry. Look, we've got plenty of water, food, and daylight left. We're both in good shape, and you've got your fancy compass. We can either backtrack and try to find where we went wrong, or— His eyes sparkled with mischief. We can see where this path leads. Who knows what we might discover? Alex wanted to argue, to insist they turn back immediately and find the proper trail. That would be the sensible thing to do, the safe choice. But something in Jamie's expression made him hesitate. There was such genuine excitement there, such trust that everything would work out. And despite his better judgment, Alex found himself nodding. Okay, but just for a little while. And we need to keep track of our direction so we can find our way back. Jamie's smile widened, and he squeezed Alex's shoulder before letting go. That's the spirit. I promise you won't regret it. As they continued along the unmarked path, Alex couldn't decide if he was making a terrible mistake or the best decision of his life. The trail became less defined, requiring them to occasionally climb over fallen trees or pick their way carefully across rocky sections. But with each challenge they overcame together, Alex felt a growing sense of accomplishment and, surprisingly, freedom. Jamie seemed to sense this change in him. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Being off the map, not knowing exactly what's coming next. Alex considered this for a moment. I guess I am. It's liberating, in a way. Though I'm still keeping track of our route, he added quickly. Jamie laughed. I wouldn't expect anything less. But it's good to see you embracing a little uncertainty. The path eventually led them to a small stream, its clear water bubbling over smooth stones. Without hesitation, Jamie sat down on a large rock, pulled off his boots and socks, and dangled his feet in the water with a sigh of contentment. Oh man, that feels amazing. You've got to try this, Alex. After a moment's hesitation, Alex joined him, wincing slightly at the cold water before relaxing into the sensation. The cool stream soothed his tired feet while the sun warmed his face. It was, he had to admit, pretty close to perfect. See? Sometimes the best experiences are the ones you don't plan for, Jamie said softly, as if reading his thoughts. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the gentle sound of the water and the occasional call of birds overhead. When Jamie spoke again, his voice had a thoughtful quality Alex rarely heard from him. Can I tell you something? Something I've never told anyone else. Alex turned to look at him, surprised by the sudden vulnerability in his friend's usually confident demeanor. Of course. Jamie stared at the water, watching the patterns of light dancing across its surface. Everyone thinks I'm this carefree guy who lives for adventure and never worries about anything. And I guess that's partly true. But sometimes— He paused, searching for words. Sometimes I feel like I'm just running. Like if I slow down and stay in one place too long, everything will catch up to me. What are you running from? Alex asked gently. Jamie shrugged, still not meeting his eyes. Expectations, maybe. Fear of disappointing people. My parents always wanted me to follow in their footsteps, become a lawyer, settle down with a nice girl, live in the suburbs. When I told them I wanted to be a wildlife photographer, that I couldn't imagine being confined to an office, well, let's just say they weren't thrilled. Alex nodded, understanding more than Jamie might realize. My parents weren't exactly overjoyed when I chose environmental science over medicine. They still introduced me as their son who could have been a doctor. This earned a small smile from Jamie. Exactly. But it's more than that. It's also— He hesitated, then seemed to gather his courage. It's also about being honest about who I am. What I want. Who I want. There was something in the way he said those last words that made Alex's heart beat faster. But before he could respond, Jamie stood up abruptly. Anyway, enough serious talk. Let's see where this stream leads, shall we? The moment had passed, leaving Alex with more questions than answers and a strange mix of disappointment and hope. He followed Jamie as they continued their unplanned journey, the stream becoming their guide. What they discovered next took their breath away. The stream led them to a small, hidden waterfall cascading into a crystal-clear pool surrounded by moss-covered rocks and wildflowers. It was like something from a fairy tale, a secret place untouched by the outside world. Alex, Jamie whispered, his eyes wide with wonder. This is incredible. I bet most hikers never even know this exists. It's not on any of the trail maps, Alex confirmed, equally awestruck. We might be the only people who've seen this in who knows how long. Without warning, Jamie began stripping off his shirt. I'm going in. You coming? Alex hesitated, but only briefly. The sight of the inviting pool, and if he was honest with himself, the sight of Jamie's bare chest gleaming in the dappled sunlight, made the decision for him. Soon they were both splashing in the refreshingly cool water, laughing like children as they swam beneath the small waterfall. This is insane, Alex called out over the sound of rushing water. We're lost in the wilderness, and instead of trying to find our way back, we're swimming. Jamie swam closer, pushing wet hair from his eyes. Would you rather be back on the marked trail with all the other hikers, seeing only what everyone else sees? When he put it that way, Alex had to admit the answer was no. This moment, this perfect, unexpected moment, felt like a gift he wouldn't have received if they'd stayed on the planned route. After their swim, they spread their shirts on sun-warmed rocks to dry and shared the lunch they'd packed. The simple meal of sandwiches and fruit tasted better than any fancy restaurant fare could have at that moment. As they ate, Jamie pointed out a deer that had cautiously approached the opposite side of the pool to drink. Don't move, he whispered, slowly reaching for his camera. The click of the shutter was barely audible, but the deer's head shot up, ears alert, before it bounded gracefully back into the forest. Got it, Jamie said triumphantly, showing Alex the perfect shot he'd captured. The deer mid-drink, its reflection mirrored in the still water of the pool. That's amazing, Alex said sincerely. You have a real talent, you know. Jamie's expression softened. Thanks. That means a lot, especially coming from you. Why especially from me? Jamie looked away, suddenly finding the remainder of his sandwich fascinating. Because you don't say things you don't mean. When most people compliment my photography, it feels like they're just being nice. But you notice details. You understand what makes something special. The conversation shifted to safer topics after that, but Alex couldn't help feeling that something had changed between them, some invisible barrier beginning to crumble. Once their clothes had dried and they'd rested, they reluctantly left their hidden paradise behind. Alex consulted his compass, calculating their best route back toward the main trail. The afternoon was advancing, and while they still had several hours of daylight left, he didn't want to risk being in unfamiliar territory after dark. Their return journey took them up a steep hillside that left them both breathless. When they reached the top, however, the effort proved worthwhile. Spread before them was a panoramic view even more spectacular than what the official viewpoint would have offered. Rolling hills covered in emerald forest stretching to distant mountains painted in shades of blue and purple. Wow, Jamie breathed, already raising his camera. I don't even have words. They stood side by side, absorbing the majesty of the landscape. Without thinking, Alex pointed to a distant peak. That's Mount Rainier. And over there, that's the valley where the main trail runs. So we know where we are now? More or less. We should head in that direction, Alex indicated with his hand, and we'll eventually intersect with the trail. But neither made a move to leave just yet, too captivated by the view and the moment they were sharing. Can I ask you something? Jamie said after a while, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. Alex nodded, curious about what could make his confident friend sound so uncertain. Are you happy? I mean, with your life, your choices, everything? The question caught Alex off guard. It wasn't what he'd been expecting, and he found himself really considering it before answering. I think so. I love my work, even if it's not what my parents wanted for me. I feel like I'm making a difference, in my own small way. He paused, then added more quietly. But sometimes I wonder if I'm missing out on certain experiences because I'm too cautious, too afraid to take risks. Jamie turned to face him fully now. What kind of risks? Alex's heart hammered in his chest. They weren't just talking about hiking trails anymore. They both knew it. Emotional ones, I guess. Being vulnerable. Telling people how I really feel. And how do you feel right now? Jamie's voice was barely above a whisper. Before Alex could answer. Before he could find the courage to put into words the feelings he'd been harboring for longer than he cared to admit, a distant rumble of thunder interrupted the moment. They both looked up to see dark clouds gathering on the horizon. We should get moving, Alex said, both relieved and disappointed by the interruption. That storm could move in faster than we expect. Jamie nodded, but the look he gave Alex suggested their conversation wasn't over, merely postponed. They made their way down from the viewpoint with renewed purpose, moving as quickly as safety allowed through the increasingly dense forest. The temperature dropped noticeably as the storm approached, and the wind picked up, rustling through the trees with an almost ominous sound. How much farther do you think? Jamie asked after they'd been hiking for about an hour. The question revealed a rare hint of concern from the usually carefree man. Alex checked his compass again. We should be getting close to the main trail. Maybe another mile or so. As if the forest was determined to challenge them one last time. The path ahead suddenly disappeared into a tangle of fallen trees and dense undergrowth, likely the result of a previous storm. We'll have to go around, Alex said, assessing their options. Let's try this way. The detour cost them precious time and daylight. By the time they finally found signs of the main trail, the sky had darkened considerably, both from the approaching storm and the setting sun. The first fat raindrops began to fall just as they spotted a small trail shelter ahead. A simple three-sided structure with a roof, designed to offer hikers temporary protection from the elements. Perfect timing, Jamie said as they ducked inside moments before the rain began in earnest. The shelter was basic but dry, with a bench along the back wall, and just enough space for two people to stretch out if necessary. Alex pulled a small LED lantern from his backpack and switched it on, casting a warm glow around their shelter. Outside, the rain was now falling heavily, drumming on the roof and creating a curtain of water around the three open sides of the structure. Looks like we might be here for a while, Jamie observed, settling onto the bench and pulling a lightweight thermal blanket from his pack. He patted the space beside him. Might as well get comfortable. Alex joined him, acutely aware of how close they were sitting, their shoulders and thighs touching in the confined space. He tried to focus on practical matters. At least we're on the main trail now. Once the storm passes, it should be straightforward to get back to the trailhead, even if it's dark. I've got my headlamp. Jamie nodded, but he seemed distracted, gazing out at the rain with an unreadable expression. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft but clear above the sound of the downpour. You know what? I'm glad we got lost today. Alex turned to look at him, surprised. You are? Even with the storm and everything. Jamie met his eyes, and the intensity there made Alex's breath catch. Especially with the storm and everything. Think about it. If we'd stayed on the marked trail, we would have seen the same views as everyone else, taken the same photos, had the same experience as thousands of hikers before us. Instead, we found that amazing waterfall, had it all to ourselves. We saw things almost no one else gets to see. He paused, then added more quietly. And I got to see a side of you that I don't think many people do. The Alex who jumps into hidden pools and climbs steep hills just to see what's on the other side. Alex smiled slightly. I'm not usually that person. But you could be. You were today. There was something in Jamie's voice, a warmth, an invitation, that gave Alex courage he didn't know he possessed. Maybe it's about who I'm with, not where I am. The words hung between them, honest and exposed. Jamie's eyes widened slightly, and for a moment Alex feared he'd said too much, revealed too much. But then Jamie's hand found his in the dim light, fingers intertwining with a gentle pressure that sent electricity up Alex's arm. I've been wanting to tell you something for a long time, Jamie said, his usual confidence replaced by a vulnerability that made him seem younger somehow. But I was afraid it would change everything between us, that I might lose you as a friend. Alex's heart was pounding so hard he was sure Jamie must be able to hear it. What did you want to tell me? Jamie took a deep breath. That I'm in love with you. Have been for. I don't even know how long. Maybe since the first time we met, and you spent 20 minutes explaining the difference between various pine trees to me. He laughed softly at the memory. I thought you were the most passionate, interesting person I'd ever met. Still do. The world seemed to stop for Alex. All he could hear was the rain. All he could see was Jamie's face in the gentle glow of the lantern. All he could feel was the warmth of their joined hands. Words failed him completely. Jamie's expression grew uncertain in the face of Alex's silence. I understand if you don't feel the same way. We can pretend I never said anything. Go back to it. Alex finally found his voice. I do. Feel the same way. I mean. The words came out in a rush. I just never thought, never imagined you could possibly. Relief and joy transformed Jamie's face. Really? All this time, we've both been feeling the same thing and neither of us said anything? I guess we were both afraid of the same thing, losing what we already had. Jamie's free hand came up to gently touch Alex's cheek. And now I'm thinking that getting lost might be the best thing that ever happened to me. The distance between them disappeared as Jamie leaned forward, his lips meeting Alex's in a kiss that felt like coming home and embarking on a new adventure all at once. Outside, the storm continued, but inside their small shelter, something beautiful and long-awaited was finally blooming. They talked for hours as the rain gradually subsided, sharing stories and feelings they'd kept hidden for too long. Alex admitted how he'd been drawn to Jamie's spontaneity and zest for life from the beginning, how being around him made Alex want to be braver, less constrained by his own caution. Jamie confessed that he admired Alex's thoughtfulness and depth, how he found meaning in things others overlooked. "We balance each other," Jamie said, his arm now comfortably around Alex's shoulders. "You help ground me when I might float away, and I help you spread your wings when you might stay rooted in one place." By the time the rain stopped completely, night had fallen. The forest around them was dark and dripping, but the sky had cleared, revealing a canopy of stars visible through the trees. "Look at that," Jamie whispered, pointing upward. "No light pollution out here. You can see everything." They stepped outside the shelter, still holding hands, and tilted their heads back to take in the spectacular display above them. The Milky Way stretched across the sky, a river of stars so dense and bright it seemed close enough to touch. "It's incredible," Alex murmured. "Makes you feel small and significant at the same time, doesn't it? Like we're just tiny parts of something enormous, but still connected to it all." Jamie squeezed his hand. "That's exactly it. Connected." He turned to face Alex, his expression earnest in the starlight. "I don't want to go back to how things were before today. I want to see where this leads, where we lead each other." Alex nodded, feeling a certainty he rarely experienced. "Me too. I think we've been heading toward this moment for a long time, even if we didn't realize it. Like finding our way through the forest today. Sometimes the path isn't clear until you're already on it." Jamie's smile was radiant even in the darkness. "Look at you, getting all poetic. I like the sight of you." They decided to spend the night in the shelter rather than attempting to navigate the wet, muddy trail in darkness. With their combined supplies, Alex's emergency blanket and Jamie's thermal one, they created a reasonably comfortable sleeping arrangement on the wooden floor of the shelter. Lying side by side, they continued talking softly, occasionally pausing to share gentle kisses that felt both new and somehow familiar. Morning arrived with golden light filtering through the trees and the songs of birds announcing the new day. Alex woke first, momentarily disoriented before remembering everything that had happened. Jamie was still asleep beside him, one arm draped protectively across Alex's chest, his face peaceful and vulnerable in sleep. Alex allowed himself a moment to simply watch Jamie, to absorb the reality that this wasn't a dream. They had found each other in the most unexpected way, by literally losing their path and discovering something better. When Jamie finally stirred and opened his eyes, the smile that spread across his face at the sight of Alex confirmed that he felt the same way. "Good morning," he murmured, voice husky with sleep. "For a second I thought yesterday might have been a dream." "Not a dream," Alex assured him, brushing a strand of hair from Jamie's forehead with gentle fingers. "Though I'm still having trouble believing it myself." They packed up their makeshift camp and began the journey back to the trailhead, following the now clear main path. Everything looked different in the morning light, fresher, more vibrant somehow. Or perhaps it was just their perception that had changed. "You know what I was thinking?" Jamie said as they walked side by side, hands occasionally brushing. "We should make this an annual tradition. Come back to this trail every year on this date. Even though we got lost and caught in a storm?" Alex teased. Jamie grinned. "Especially because of that. Though maybe next time we can skip the getting drenched part." "I like the idea," Alex said sincerely. A reminder of where we started. As they neared the end of the trail, the forest began to thin, and they could see glimpses of the parking area ahead. Soon they would be back in the regular world, with jobs and responsibilities and decisions to make about how to navigate this new dimension of their relationship. Jamie seemed to sense Alex's thoughts. He stopped walking and turned to face him. "Before we go back to civilization, I want you to know something. Whatever happens next, however we figure this out, yesterday wasn't just a magical moment in the woods that disappears once we leave. What I feel for you is real, and it's not going anywhere." Alex felt a warmth spread through his chest at these words. "I feel the same way, and I'm not afraid anymore. Of taking risks, of being vulnerable with you. Getting lost yesterday showed me that sometimes the best things happen when you leave the marked path." Jamie's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Then I guess we'll just have to see where our path leads next." Together, hand in hand, they emerged from the forest into the clearing, ready to begin the next chapter of their journey, one that had started with a wrong turn but had led them exactly where they needed to be. Total _char_count, 18,691.